Her final words moment before being electrocuted made the executioner turn it off, leaving everyone shocked with the truth. The air in the execution chamber was thick with tension as Lena prepared to meet her fate. Then, with a single sentence, she shattered the courtroom's grim silence, her final words unraveling everything the world thought it knew. Don't miss the twist that changes everything. Watch till the end. Before we continue the story, comment down below, from which part of the world are you connected with us right now? Lena, a poised woman in her early 30s, had spent years drowning in rumors and tabloid scandals. Now, locked in a dim Riverton City prison cell, she stood at the heart of a trial that had consumed the metropolis. The charges were unthinkable: the kidnapping and murder of Sophie, the vanished daughter of the once revered Judge Daniel Hartwell. The girl had disappeared 5 years ago, and with her, the judge had retreated from public life. For Lena, the death sentence wasn't just punishment, it was the climax of a city's rage. The public had branded her a monster long before the trial began. Riverton needed someone to blame for Sophie's loss, and Lena, with her quiet defiance, became the perfect villain. Newspapers painted her as heartless, cruel, a symbol of betrayal. No one cared about the truth anymore. They only wanted blood. Yet, amid the fury, Lena remained eerily composed, a mystery even to her own lawyer. "You have to fight," he whispered desperately during a recess. "If you give them anything, we might still save you." Lena's voice was hollow. "It won't change anything. They've already decided I'm guilty." She had accepted her fate, not because justice demanded it, but because the city did. In her cell, Lena's gaze often fixed on a crack in the wall, as if it held the answers to the years of torment she'd endured. Fear never touched her. Instead, she clung to one unshakable truth, one that would die with her. The night before her execution, a priest came to hear her last confession. "Will you unburden your soul, my child?" he asked softly. Lena's answer was firm. "No, Father, the truth won't save me now." The silence of the prison corridor swallowed Lena's words, leaving behind only the weight of unspoken truths. Alone in her cell that final night, Lena let her mind drift through the wreckage of her past. Once, her life had been bright with possibility, laughter, passion, defiance. Then came the day everything shattered. A stolen glance, a forbidden touch. Judge Hartwell had drawn her into a love affair that would ignite Riverton's most infamous scandal. Now, the cold walls of her prison seemed to whisper back the secret she had carried all these years. The trial had been a circus. 5 years ago, the world had watched in horror as Lena stood accused of kidnapping and murdering little Sophie. But beneath the sensational headlines lay a darker story, one of betrayal, vengeance, and justice perverted. Lena had dared to expose the truth, that the Honorable Judge Hartwell had taken her as his mistress. She had even hinted at darker sins lurking beneath his polished reputation. But fate twisted against her. On the night of the judge's wife's death, a night that should have been ordinary, a car crash claimed the woman's life. And when Sophie vanished from the wreckage, Lena became the perfect scapegoat. The public's rage was riling up. The media painted her as a monster, the evidence stacked like bricks around her. Though she swore her innocence, the court delivered its verdict without hesitation. Judge Hartwell, in a final act of cruelty, sentenced her to 5 years in solitary confinement, a slow death of silence and isolation. Yet, in those endless empty days, Lena found a strange kind of strength. She would meet her fate not with fear, but with the quiet defiance of a woman who knew the truth would outlast them all. The morning before execution day dawned cold and final, yet fate had one last twist and left. Just hours after the priest left her cell, the heavy door clanged open again. This time, it was Judge Hartwell himself who stood in the doorway, his presence like a knife in the dark. His eyes burned with cold triumph as he leaned close. "I hope hell burns you slowly," he hissed, "just like it took Sophie." The words struck like a physical blow. Lena stood paralyzed, the poison of his hatred seeping into her veins as he turned on his heel and disappeared into the shadows. That night, sleep refused to come. The judge's curse echoed in her skull, each repetition twisting deeper than the last. His visit had been no accident. It was the final turn of the knife in a system that had condemned her long before the trial. When the guards came at dawn of execution day, something primal awoke in Lena. She retaliated, her voice raw with fury. "Stop this madness!" she screamed as they wrestled her into the corridor. "The truth is still out there. You're killing an innocent woman." But her cries dissolved into the hum of the prison. They hauled her into the execution chamber, where rows of hungry eyes watched, some gleaming with righteousness, others dark with ghoulish fascination. The air smelled of sweat and sanitizer as they strapped her down before an audience that had already decided her guilt. The execution chamber buzzed with hushed voices until one cut through like a knife. "Burn in hell, child killer!" Leather straps bit into Lena's wrists as they secured her to the chair. The executioner's hand hovered over the switch when he asked the ritual question. "Any last words?" Lena's gaze locked onto Hartwell's smug smile in the front row. That smirk ignited something primal in her. "Yes," she said, her voice steady as a surgeon's blade. "Sophie Hartwell isn't dead. She's my daughter, and she's alive." Gasps rippled through the room. Hartwell's smile froze. "Check his phone!" Lena shouted. "The proof's in the Blackwood Valley farmhouse." Chaos erupted. Lawyers surged forward, screaming for a stay. The executioner stepped back in confusion. Hartwell's face purpled with rage. "She's lying! Proceed with the execution!" He bellowed, but his voice cracked with panic. Lena leaned forward against her restraints. "Tell me, Judge," she hissed, "why does your summer cabin have a nursery?" For one terrifying second, the mighty judge looked like a cornered animal. Then he turned and stormed out, his shoes clicking frantically against the floor. The door slammed like a gunshot behind him. The courtroom erupted into bedlam. Officers swarmed Judge Hartwell as he spat curses, his veneer cracking like thin ice. "Your phone, sir? Now." The lead detective's voice left no room for negotiation. Hartwell's face twisted. "This is outrageous." But the tremor in his protest betrayed him. As guards unstrapped Lena from the execution chair, news vans already screeched to a halt outside the prison. Headlines rewritten in real time blazed across screens nationwide. "Death row miracle. Kidnapped girl alive?" In the interrogation room's harsh fluorescent light, Lena finally spoke her truth, words bottled up for 5 endless years. "Sophie is my daughter," she began, her voice steady despite the storm inside. "Hartwell's too." She painted a picture of stolen moments, whispered promises in dark corridors, a judge who'd sworn to leave his barren wife, how his ambition had outweighed his love when she'd gotten pregnant. The adoption story fabricated to explain Sophie's sudden appearance in his perfect family. "And when I threatened to expose him," Lena's nails bit into her palms, "that's when his wife mysteriously died in that crash. That's when I became the monster who stole his child." Outside, sirens wailed towards Blackwood Valley. Somewhere, a little girl with Lena's eyes was about to become the most famous child in America. The interrogation room door slammed shut as Hartwell's fist hit the table. "You expect anyone to believe I'd murder my family?" His laugh was razor-edged, too sharp to be real. Sweat glistened at his temples despite the room's chill. "This is insanity! Release me immediately!" Then Lena spoke, her voice cutting through his bluster like winter wind. "Blackwood Valley," she said. Those 3 words made the judge's pupils dilate. "Your grandmother's farm, where you took me that summer, when you still pretended to love me." A coffee cup rattled as Hartwell's knee jerked beneath the table. "That wretched place burned down years ago. My relatives are dead. You're remembering how you called it hell," Lena continued, leaning forward. Her chains clinked. "That's what you told Sophie too, isn't it? When you hid her there after staging her death? Rot in hell. Just like Sophie. You weren't cursing me. You were gloating." The color drained from Hartwell's face. One of the detectives quietly drew his sidearm. Lena turned to the police chief, her voice urgent. "Send your men now, but keep him isolated. If he gets one phone call, she'll vanish forever." Across the room, Hartwell's breathing turned ragged. His fingers twitched toward his suit pocket, where a phone had been confiscated minutes earlier. The police chief nodded to 2 officers. "Hold him in the secure wing." Then into his radio. "Assemble a tactical team. We're raiding Blackwood Valley." As they dragged Hartwell away, his loafers scraped streaks across the floor where he dug in his heels. "She's lying!" The scream echoed down the corridor. "You'll find nothing but ashes." Lena watched him disappear, her pulse roaring in her ears. Somewhere beyond those concrete walls, beneath some forgotten sunset, her daughter was waiting. The police convoy snaked up the gravel driveway, tires crunching over decades of fallen pine needles. The farmhouse loomed ahead, its weathered porch sagging under the weight of secrets. Then, movement. A curtain twitched in an upstairs window. A small face, pale as moonlight, peered out before vanishing. The lead detective's radio crackled. "We've got visual on a child." Repeat, visual confirmation of a minor female. Boots pounded up the porch steps. The door creaked open before they could knock, revealing a stooped woman with hands knotted in her apron. Behind her, an old man stood rigid, shotgun lowered but not relinquished. "You're too late," the woman whispered. "He told us you'd come to take her away." And there, half hidden behind her grandfather's legs, stood Sophie. Not a ghost, not a memory, a living, breathing girl with Lena's sharp cheekbones and wary eyes. The truth spilled out between the old couple's trembling words, how Hartwell had appeared like a specter that stormy night 5 years ago, clutching a sobbing toddler. How he'd spun a tale of dangerous criminals hunting his adopted daughter. How they'd kept her hidden, even from neighbors, their silence bought with fear. Back in the city, cameras flashed as federal agents dragged Hartwell from the courthouse in handcuffs. His $1,000 suit wrinkled, his hair disheveled, the mighty judge finally looked exactly what he was, a thief of lives, an architect of lies. And somewhere in a quiet interrogation room, Lena pressed her forehead against the one-way glass as detectives played the footage from body cams. There, in grainy black and white, was a daughter she'd thought lost forever. Sophie was alive. The world would know Hartwell's sins by morning. His carefully constructed plot to destroy Lena, to bury the truth she dared to speak and erase the shadows of his own past, collapsed piece by piece under the weight of undeniable evidence. By the time the gavel fell for the final time, the town was already shifting. Lena's nightmare, her wrongful conviction, her fight for freedom, had ignited fierce discussions about justice, the power of public perception, and the cost of blind trust in appearances. In her wake, new voices rose. Advocacy groups formed, fueled by her defiance, offering hope to others trapped in the same broken system. Alone in the stillness after the trial, Lena turned her pain into purpose. What had been meant to destroy her would instead become a force for change. The truth, no matter how deeply hidden, always found its way to the light. The day the verdict was read, the same crowd that had once called for her punishment now stood outside the courthouse, voices trembling with remorse. "Forgive us, Lena," they cried, as if their words could undo the damage of years of doubt. The media, once complicit in painting her as a monster, now scrambled to tell the real story, the story of a woman wronged, of justice delayed but not denied. "All I want is my daughter," Lena whispered to the cameras, her tears unchecked. But freedom didn't erase the years lost. Sophie had grown up without her, shaped by lies and fear. Now, with the truth laid bare, Lena faced the hardest battle yet, mending what had been broken, one fragile moment at a time. Healing would not come quickly, but for the first time in years, it was possible. The long months of courtroom battles and flashing cameras had finally faded into memory. When mother and daughter embraced at last, no words were needed. The silent press of Lena's arms around Sophie said everything. A vow, unshakable as stone. No more fear, no more separation. Only this, only them. Piece by piece, they rebuilt their lives from the wreckage left behind. Sophie, no longer a child kept in the dark, understood now. The truth was not a stain, but a badge of honor. Her mother's love, fierce and unyielding, had defied every shadow that tried to swallow them. The woman the world called a criminal, Sophie knew as a warrior. And so sorrow loosened its grip. In its place came quiet mornings, shared laughter, the kind of peace that settles deep in the bones. Willow Creek welcomed them like an old friend. Nestled in the embrace of Blackwood Valley, their little house stood sturdy and bright, its walls humming with the promise of fresh starts. The great-grandparents who had sheltered Sophie with such devotion now wrapped their arms around Lena too, stitching their family back together with threads of patience and grace. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in gold and amber, Lena pulled Sophie close. "We're here," she murmured, lips brushing her daughter's hair. "And this time we stay." The horizon burned with the fire of beginnings. Time softened the jagged edges of the past, but Lena refused to let her wounds fade quietly into memory. Instead, she turned them into weapons, sharp, purposeful. She stood before crowds in community halls and courthouse steps, her voice steady as she carved open the injustices of the system that had tried to bury her. People listened, movements sparked, and in the flicker of those gathering flames, others found the courage to speak. Each evening, as she walked Sophie home beneath the amber glow of streetlights, their intertwined fingers spoke louder than any speech. They were proof, living, breathing proof, that even when the world tried to break you, you could still rise, still rebuild. Of course, shadows lingered. Some nights Lena would startle awake, heart pounding, the ghost of prison bars still etched behind her eyelids. Some days Sophie would clutch her a little too tightly, as if afraid she might vanish. But they had learned this. Scars were not just reminders of pain, they were maps of survival. And so they claimed their joy fiercely. The syrup-sweet chaos of pancake mornings, the hush of bedtime stories, pages turning like whispered secrets. The way Sophie's small hand would sneak into Lena's during thunderstorms, wordless and trusting. These were not just moments, they were victories, each one a stone laid over the abyss that had once threatened to swallow them whole. Lena's name, once dragged through headlines like a crime, now rang with a different weight. It was murmured in support groups, scrawled across protest signs, a beacon for those still lost in the dark. Her story was no longer just hers. It had become a torch, passed from hand to shaking hand, lighting the way towards something brighter. Because the truth, when wielded with enough force, could shatter even the most carefully constructed lies, and she would never stop swinging. The collapse of Judge Hartwell's empire sent shockwaves far beyond the courtroom. His name, once spoken with deference, now dripped with venom in the town's collective memory. The scandal carved a path for change, demands for transparency, for justice that didn't bend to power. And at the heart of it all stood Lena's story, a spark that refused to be smothered. Evening draped itself over Willow Creek in hushed golds and purples as Lena settled onto the porch steps, Sophie tucked warm against her side. The wind carried the scent of pine and distant rain, sweeping through the valley like a sigh of release. Lena let her eyes fall shut. No more running, no more fear, just this, the weight of her daughter's head on her shoulder, the creak of the swing chains, the first fireflies blinking awake in the gathering dusk. Her lips moved soundlessly, not a prayer to any god, but a promise, to Sophie, to herself, to the ghosts they'd outrun. This time, we write our own story, and it would be etched in sunlight, in stubborn laughter, in the quiet, unbreakable act of choosing each other again and again. The truth will always come to surface, no matter how deep it is buried. A lot of times, the media exposure and buried truths create perverted justice. Therefore, believing everything on social media is also too dangerous. What would you if you were in the same place as Lena? Would you give in or revolt for your justice? Have you ever wondered how many cases like this goes unheard inside the four walls of courtroom? Comment your thoughts down below and make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing stories.